Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. And oh my goodness, there's so much going on in this cake. This cake started out as a gothic themed cake. I had a stencil that I wanted to use, and I consulted one of my coworkers about what I should do with this stencil. And together we came up with this idea of a gothic style cake using some Isomalt decorations. And I'm doing black, red, and gold. So let's get started with the Isomalt decorations. I'm using Loran's Isomalt crystals, and I'm just making it according to the directions on the container. So you basically mix it with water, the powder with the water, or the crystals with the water. Then you bring them to a boil and heat it until it reaches 320 degrees. Then I like to transfer it to another container. I'm making two different colors this time. I'm making red and black. So I'm using some for the red, and then I'm reserving the rest for the black. And I'm just adding some regular gel food coloring to the Isomalt and just spinning it around and mixing it together. So you saw me starting with the other color, but I just kind of skipped through that apparently. And I'm showing you how I'm using my silicone molds, because on this stencil, it's a chandelier stencil by Evil Cake Genius, I believe. I've had it for a few years, so I'm going to have to research and try to find a link where you can purchase one of these also. So I wanted to use the Isomalt as some of the hanging crystals. So that's why I did the square silicone molds. They're, what would you call it? Like a gem mold. But while I'm at it, I went ahead and made some Isomalt fans and some Isomalt flowers. Now, the trick with the Isomalt with molds is you have to make sure that they are silicone. Silicone will hold up to the heat of the Isomalt. This Isomalt is very hot, and guys, don't do as I do. Wear heat-resistant gloves if you're not used to working with Isomalt. It's very, 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 very hot and dangerous. I've just worked with it for so long, I still burn myself every once in a while, don't get me wrong, but I kind of learned how to work with it, so I feel a little bit safer working without the gloves. But don't do that right away. So I made 6 of these petals. And I'm using that silicone mold here. I guess I'm just inserting here where I did some of the black. So I did some black flowers, some more black flowers, and some black leaves. And I showed you that I'm showing you now, actually, I'm going to. If your Isomalt firms up before you're done working with it, well, eventually here, I'm going to show you. Maybe I did show you. Maybe I missed that. Too busy talking, not paying attention. You can use your creme brulee torch to torch the Isomalt again, to heat it back up again so that it's more liquid again. But make sure you're not burning your silicone mold with the heat of your torch. So all of the flowers are made. All the petals are made, I should say, and the leaves and the little pressed flowers. Those are just setting aside. And in the meantime, I'm making the decoration for the bottom of the cake. What this is just black fondant with some Tylose mixed in. The Tylose is going to make it firm up faster and get it to hold its shape faster. If I had not added the Tylose, these, I don't know what we should call these, are kind of an abstract ruffle texture on the bottom, but they're not really ruffles. It's just kind of some movement with the fondant. They set up, since I had the Tylose in there, they set up within probably 4 hours so that I could use them. I'm just using the large silicone mold, sphere mold, to place them in to dry. I also made some more that you can't see here and placed them inside of flower formers, large flower formers. That works too. Anything that's going to be large enough to hold the larger pieces of fondant and keep them in their shape as they dry. And that's just parchment paper that I used to hold the edges up so that as they dried, they didn't flop over, because that was a lot of extra fondant on those. Now, once I had removed our fans and our leaves and our petals from the molds, I'm using my creme brulee torch again to remove that cloudiness that you get especially when you're working with silicone molds. It seems like it creates a cloudiness where it's touching the silicone. So move your torch around so it's not in one place for too long. But it removes the air bubbles and it clears them up. And then I use that was a confectioner's glaze right there to seal them so that they do not cloud over again. And it does add a little bit more shine to them. Now I'm just rolling out the regular fondant. There's no Tylose mixed in with this. This is the fondant that I'm using to cover the cakes. And I'm just doing the tops here. I'm just cutting up the circles for the tops. I just rolled them out at the same time. I used my large rolling pin and rolled them out at the same time and just cut off the excess and set them aside. Now I'm rolling out, I like to do the panel method, and I just recently had somebody ask me a good question about the panel method, why I do that. And I do that to avoid the ripping and tearing that you can get over the top edge of the cake when you drape a piece of fondant over the entire cake. Most of my cakes are tall, and with height adds gravity, and gravity adds weight. So what does that do? That pulls your fondant and can cause some ripping and thinning of your fondant and too much roundness on the edges, the top edges of the cake. So I like to do the panel method to keep your fondant in its original good, thickness and without stretching it out. And yes, you can kind of see a seam around the top edge where the side pieces meet the top, but you really don't notice that. And I had showed how on my stencil, I just taped off the pieces that I'm going to replace with those Isomalt crystals. I rolled out my fondant. I put some shortening on it. I brushed shortening on it, placed the stencil on there. The shortening is going to hold it in place, and the shortening is also going to make your luster dust very shiny. With this technique, you don't have to use any buttercream. You don't have to use any royal icing. You just have to be very careful that when you lift it on the cake, as I'm doing now, you're not touching it because it will rub off. It will rub off, but it won't melt off or drip off. Does that make sense? It's there to stay unless you touch it, I guess is a good way to put it. And this is our bottom tier. I turned it upside down because I wanted to do this kind of dimensional dry brush technique on it to kind of gradiate the gold from the top down. I love how you have that kind of like shadow effect underneath the brightness. And that's just from dry brushing it on and kind of brushing it downward, like some downward strokes right before I was finished with that part. And again, that gold can rub off if you touch it, since it's just attached with shortening. And since we have that issue, to lift the top tier onto the bottom one, I just used a sharpened dowel, pushed it down through the cake, and then put a spatula underneath it, offset spatula, lift it up. Or no, I think I just used my hand. Either way, just lifted it up off that board and transferred it to the cake that way. That way you're not touching any of the gold parts. And there is some buttercream in between the two tiers to hold them together. And I did push that sharpened dowel straight through to anchor the top one onto the bottom. The Isomalt crystals on the chandelier, I just attached with piping gel. That's all I used. And then I'm using buttercream to attach these bottom abstract ruffle pieces. Now I did stick some toothpicks in there, here and there, to get them attached until the buttercream set up. Because when you have some shortening on your fondant, the buttercream, there's kind of a little barrier to prevent the buttercream from adhering right away. So I just used those toothpicks until it had set up. Now, I don't think I show you me removing them, but you just twist them out once it is firmed up. Then I went ahead and added some feathers on the top. All of these I'm attaching with some buttercream. All these Isomalt decorations, just buttercream, the flower, the fans, and the little flowers. And I did add those black leaves that I show you I made, but I didn't show you adding them. But same thing, just added them with some buttercream. Now, if this was for an order, you would want to wrap your feathers and the stems, the wire part, with some floral tape, or insert them into a straw that's inserted into the cake for food safety reasons. So I hope you like this one. I really like it. I think it's a really neat, eye-catching design, and I love the gold with the chandelier and the idea for using Isomalt for the hanging crystals on the chandelier. I think it really brings it together. I hope you liked it. Hope you got something from it, and we'll catch you on the next one.